Okay, we've been getting a lot of really great music this year, especially within the prog metal scene. So I've got two videos coming up, this one that you're watching and one that will be up very shortly, of some top-notch prog metal that man, they're coming in right at the end of 2023 and they're vying for some high spots on my year-end list. So anyway, let's dive into it. Let the Truth Speak by Earthside. So Earthside is a American progressive metal band. They got their start, I guess, halfway through the 2010s. Now, I remember when they were touring with Leprous, when Leprous was doing their Congregation album. And I believe at that point they had only put out A Dream in Static. And it was a good debut album. You know, it had some really interesting progressive metal tracks on it. It had a lot of really interesting and deep cuts on that one. At the end of the day, I would just say it's kind of a generic progressive metal album, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, there were some moments on there that I was like, ooh, that's really tasty, but that didn't really add anything that really bumped them up in that sense. So the album came out in 2015, and now 8 years later, we're getting the follow-up of Let the Truth Speak. This one, I think, definitely improved upon what they were laying out with that first album. And it almost feels like within the 8-year stretch that we had with their first album and this album, it doesn't feel like it's a strict follow-up. You know, it doesn't feel like a sister album or like it's coming off the heels to it. It almost feels like within those 8 years, they had put out music between the two, and this is the natural progression and the growth that the band has gone through since that first album. Like, there should be at least 2 or 3 albums between this one and the last one if you're just looking at 2 albums that are separating the band's growth. This album also features a lot of features. Like, Earthside is 4 members of Jamie Von Dick, Frank Scaramore, Ryan Griffin, and Ben Shanbron. And, you know, the boys really do bring forth the usual quartet of a progressive metal band. But yeah, there's like each track has at least one, if not more, features on it, which on the one hand creates a little bit of I don't want to say a disjointed record, but it definitely feels like there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And even though this kitchen is a very well-oiled machine and we've got a lot of players doing what they do best, it still feels like maybe there's one too many cooks in the kitchen. You know, maybe they could have let a few people out to help just kind of have a unified sound. The overall flavor and the overall theme that I'm getting with this album is that it's very soundscapey. Like, it almost feels like a soundtrack to a movie in a lot of sense. Like, it has a lot of very big sounds. You know, you've got a lot of different emotions that are going on here, but it's also very epic in scale. And I feel like this is something that progressive metal in particular kind of struggles with. You know, they always want to produce something very big, very epic in scale, but you always run into the risk of it being a little bit over bloated, a little bit overdone. Luckily with this one, there are aspects and flavors of that here, but it's all contained within a very unified start to finish listen. The first handful of tracks, I will say, kind of have that usual progressive metal, and I almost want to say generic progressive metal, if I'm being perfectly honest. And that's with But What If We're Wrong, We Who Lament, and Tyranny. These 3 tracks do open up the album very well. It provides kind of a little bit of a soundscape for what we're going to have, and it's some really good traditional progressive metal music. When we get to Pattern of Rebirth, this is one of the first tracks that I start to get concerned about. You know, this is where I have a little bit of a concern of too many cooks in the kitchen. Maybe there's a little bit too much experimenting going on here, and I don't know if I'm completely here for it, because this is where we have AJ Channer, I believe is his name, on this one, and it's one of the few tracks that actually has in the title a feature on it. And there's this moment of rapping on it, and I know that rapping has been tried with metal even in the 90s with like the new metal with like Limp Bizkit. In the modern era, you know, we're getting a lot more of that within bands like Sleep Token, and I'm not sure if it's quite working here, and I feel as if it's more of a flash in the pan, riding the coattails of other trends, like chasing in that sense. But what I really appreciate and what I really like, and I'll give this album, this track a pass, is that it flows perfectly into the 1-2 punch, the highlight, and in my mind, the crowning jewel of this album, Watching the Earth Sink and the Lesser Evil. And in fact, Watching the Earth Sink is, I think, the only track on here that doesn't feature somebody. And it really is the big accumulation of what Earthside has learned within the 8 years since their last album. It is so unique, this track. Like, it's very somber at first, and it takes a while for it to get going. And I really appreciate that. And as the track grows and as the track blooms and blossoms, we're treated to some of the best music that I've heard all year within the progressive metal genre. You know, it's blending different styles. It's blending this more impressionistic, very new age style of presenting music with a very big and large foundation of the progressive metal movement. And as it builds itself, it's adding on layers and it's adding on different soundscapes to the ending, which is this massive crescendo, this big, beautiful blow up that I cannot help but love, that we then are carried through to the lesser evil, which is kind of a foil to it. It's less intangible and a lot more tangible. It's immediate, it's punching, it's bumping, and I love how aggressive this track feels. So I'm glad that these two tracks are followed up with Daniela's Area, because it's a much more somber, very ethereal track with just a number of women vocalizing on here. I know that there's Vicky, there's Duo Scorpio, and Cantora, that are all harmonizing in this 3-part harmonies that, again, that's where I really feel the essence of a soundscapey, soundtracky kind of feel, or like a score. Like, it almost feels like a score from a movie in that sense. And the last two tracks close off the album very well. We have the title track of Let the Truth Speak. And I love how, again, we've kind of gone back to the traditional progressive metal where, again, it's progressive in that they're trying a whole bunch of different things. We've got that more ambient soundscapes on here with that really aggressive, very powerful rhythm section. I love how this track really grows, and the crescendos on here are just fantastic. And the same can be said with the final track of All We Knew and Ever Loved. It's really does close off the album very well. It's an instrumental piece. I love, much like Watching the Earth Sink, it takes a while for it to really develop and grow, but that allows things to develop. It allows it to be built up. It doesn't just hit the ground running. It builds up that momentum. So by the end, when you have that big crescendo, it feels earned. It feels like it's the payoff to what we've been investing for. So yeah, in the end, this album was a real treat, and it really surprised me. You know, I really enjoyed their first album, and this one, it improved upon everything that first album put down, and it really progressed the music forward. This is what a progressive metal album should do, because I feel with a lot of the progressive metal outfits that we have today, they put the metal first and only kind of pay lip service to the progressive in that it's, they've got tracks that are longer, they've got weird time signatures, they have, the soaring guitars and the keyboards, but other than that, there's really nothing to call it progressive. Within Earthside, you have that progressive as a capital P, where they're moving the music forward, they're challenging the thoughts of what metal music should be. They're challenging the form, and I love it for that. And for the most part, outside of a few outliers here and there, they succeed with flying colors in doing that. So yeah, my final verdict for this one is Let the Truth Speak by Earthside is one that I would absolutely pick up in physical format. This one is a run, don't walk to go and listen to. I had a really good time with it, but be patient with it. Upon the first handful of listens with this album, I wasn't all that excited for it. But as I got into it and as I continued to bring myself back to it, because there was something there. There was something there. I'm like, I gotta listen to that one more time. I gotta dive into this album one more time. And it rewarded me for doing it. And I have a really strong feeling that it will reward you too. So that's what I've got for Let the Truth Speak from Earthside. What did you guys think about this album? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Give it a listen and let me know whatever you thought by commenting down below. Because that's all I got for you guys today. I want to thank you all so much for watching. As always, you guys are definitely the best. And until next time, notes out.